Buddy, we're going to get started today. So today's presenter is Rich Anderson, and he'll be presenting on MRO supply chain spare parts optimization. Following the presentation, there will be a Q&A session. So if you have any questions, please put them into the question area of your sidebar, and we will address those as they come in. If we run out of time at the end, we will be responding to questions one-on-one. So with that, I'd like to kick it off and hand it over to Rich Anderson.
Thank you very much, Katie. I appreciate it. So again, Richard Anderson, Vice President with Utopia. I have about 10 years of experience in the SAP and EIM space. What we're going to talk about today, I'll give you a little bit of background on Utopia, who we are, what we've done in this space, why is MRO data quality important, how you might optimize the MRO data quality, and then we'll go through a quick case study on a liquefied natural gas producer out of the Middle East. Hopefully we have a couple minutes for questions and a summary. So with that, we'll start. As an organization, Utopia is about 15 years in business. We are 500 people spread across the globe, and we started life as a data quality company, actually going out, taking customers' information, fixing that data, and providing it back to them. Now, when we started, a lot of folks were doing work in the customer and supplier space. We actually took a focus on materials and some of the more technical data that might be contained in your ERP systems, so materials or items, your equipment information, bills of material, functional locations. From there, we actually expanded our portfolio of services, focused quite a bit in the SAP EIM technologies for things like profiling, cleansing, data migration, as organizations look at transforming their business to an S4 platform or previously ECC platforms, leveraging SAP data services and information steward for those activities. And then we've also been a very strong proponent and adopter of the SAP MDG platform. As part of that, because of our experience within MDG, Master Data Governance, Utopia has developed several software solutions in partnership with SAP, including Master Data Governance for Enterprise Asset Management. So think all of your maintenance data, the Asset Information Workbench, which ties together not only master data, but other systems of records where digital twins of that information might exist, and a retail and fashion management solution leveraging Master Data Governance. Many accolades over the years, but most recently, Utopia was proudly announced as SAP's Solution Extension Partner of the Year. So without ado, let's hop into the content that we want to cover today. Happy to discuss Utopia at a later time. So we're going to talk about MRO, maintenance, repair, operations, and the spare parts associated with that. And I like this quote. This comes from Mario Abella, formerly of Suncor. And what he said is, I can go out and purchase a car for $25,000, and I can know every single spare part and procedure associated with that car. But I have hundreds of millions of dollars factory or plant or $1 billion plant, and I can't get that same information. Why is it? That's the challenge that we want to address. Furthermore, if you read the Gartners and the Bloors of the world, all the industry pundits, they have actually come back and said, look, data quality is important. In 2015, Gartner estimated that an organization on average would lose $8.8 million annually because of issues with data quality. And those issues of data quality in general have broad impacts across all areas of your organization, from IT, to buying processes, to analytics, and your ability to make strategic decisions, right? We're going to specifically focus on operational costs and how MRO is impacted in that area. So MRO master data challenges really can materialize across your enterprise. Just focusing on a couple of areas, and this is a couple of areas where improved MRO data quality and supply chain, for example, it can help reduce procurement spend, optimize inventory levels. In one situation, right, with inventory levels, we had a customer identify hundreds of millions of obsolete inventory that was just sitting there, right? It was for equipment and items that no longer existed in their organization. That had significant carrying costs and impacted warehouse management costs. They had entire buildings housing spare parts that were no longer valid. In the maintenance world, having the right part at the right time can improve plant production, decrease unexpected downtime, improve availability, and even in some areas, improve things like the wrench time or the effective work hours of your maintenance personnel. Identifying those areas of benefit to a business are really important. Because we're talking about a data quality initiative and why data quality is important for MRO as it relates to either supply chain or procurement, one of the things that we are huge proponents of, and as you look within your organization, we would recommend you to do, is to align your data quality initiative, right, and articulate how that improvement in data quality will contribute to your corporate goals, to attainment of those corporate goals. If you don't create that value chain between, hey, here's the MRO spare parts or your material data quality and how that's impacting my supply chain, how that's impacting wrench time, how that's impacting warehousing costs, you're not going to get approval, right? We have worked with customers time and time again, and what we hear is, hey, we went to the CIO, the VP of Ops, and said, we want to clean this data. And the VP of Ops said, why? Why would we do that? So that alignment, right? That alignment to corporate priorities is very important. There's no real value in just cleansing data because it's defective. You need to go through that process of saying, we want to improve supply chain and maintenance efficiency. We want to improve cross-plant sharing and spares availability as a part of that process. In order to do that, we need a single view of material masters. We need to build a material taxonomy. We need to cleanse and standardize that information so that we can get to a single catalog that will help us improve that cross-plant sharing and spare availability process. How do we get there? So over the course of 15 years, right, I said that Utopia started in the data quality space, and that's really fixed. What we found, though, is that you need a comprehensive solution in place in order to fix the data and maintain the quality of that information. So we built out what we call the build, fix, sustain methodology. Fix is what we talked about, right? Let's improve the quality of the information. Many of our customers came to us 15 years ago and said, hey, here's a material master file. Can you clean this up for us and give it back? We did that. It was a great business model, but what we found is that 2 years later, customers would come to us and say, we know you said to put in some governance and some standards around these material masters. We didn't. Can you fix it up again? Gartner says, right, that data degrades about 2 to 7% over the course of every single month, right? That's 24 to 84% of your data could degrade below what you might consider high quality. So in order to ensure that that data stays, gets good and stays good, this is the methodology that we employ. The build is really identifying that foundation. What are the standards that you're using? What are the business rules? Do you have a data quality culture in place? Once you've established that, then you go into the fix, where you improve the quality of the information, you deduplicate the data, you enrich the information from external sources, unstructured data, etc. Ultimately, though, the goal is to get to that sustainable solution. And that's where technologies such as SAP's master data governance come into play, data quality remediation solutions, as well as the organizational structure, people managing data, and the processes that are needed in order to manage that data. For MRO, because MRO is so highly interconnected, because it links together, I think that it's important to establish how does it link together, right? So how are MRO spares set up in your system? At the top level, right, you have overall structures within your maintenance and materials management processes. So you'll have, an organization, you'll have a functional location within that organization, you'll have equipment associated with that functional location, subunits, and then spare parts associated to that. Those subunits or equipment, right, need to be classified, right? So you have your equipment information. How are you describing that? Furthermore, you take your equipment information and link it down to a bill of material or your spare parts list. MRO is at the foundation of that bill of material. So if you think about all of the activities in the maintenance world, all of the activities that you're trying to drive with maintenance efficiency, if you don't know what the spare is, if you don't know what bill of material it's attached to, if you don't know what equipment that bill of material is attached to, you don't have visibility to that entire hierarchy or that entire chain of information. What does that mean at a detailed level? And so this is a good example of a material, kind of a before and after of what we're trying to achieve. Here on the left, you see motors, right? And these motors are described in multiple ways, multiple structures. There's no consistency to how abbreviations are being used or how the motor is described itself. What we really want to get to is a consistent transform description that says every single time we see a motor, whether it will have a noun, motor, it'll have a modifier, for example, AC, and then it'll have things like your horsepower or your RPMs. That consistency, right, that enhanced material description enables you to provide better search capability, standardized reporting, and better material management processes. This is the goal, right? This is the end goal of what we're looking for, because the information about this material are going to impact all of those upstream and downstream processes. To get the data clean, Utopia over the course of 15 years has established what we call the 4Cs project framework. 4Cs stand for cleansing, creating or enriching data, consolidating or the deduplication process, and classification. On the left-hand side, you see all of the data types that can go through a 4Cs process. We're focused obviously on materials today. Those materials would need to leverage industry standards and business rules, a taxonomy to describe them, so that you can go through and identify what is that noun, what is that modifier, how do you parse that data into appropriate attributes, how do you standardize things like units of measure, abbreviations, so that you can get to a process where you can create or enrich that data, whether it be from external systems, from internal catalogs, from things like your purchase orders. Utopia also has a 2 million item repository of fully cleansed and standardized items that can be integrated into this overall process to enrich your existing data. Once that is done, you go through the consolidation or deduplication of that data. You don't want multiple items of the same make, model, number in your system, ultimately to get to a classification. An initial step in that process is to actually profile data. And I like this example, right? I think it gives a good or highlights how bad data can really impact your ERP systems, impact your business processes. This is a standard stock analysis report from SAP. And you can see that there are effectively 8 ball bearings that are functionally equivalent. Those ball bearings are procured at nearly an 800% difference, from $2.54 all the way up to $19.09. Furthermore, there are multiple suppliers for these ball bearings. In one instance, Hansen, you are procuring the same ball bearing, functionally equivalent ball bearing, for nearly double the price. Why is that? Right? If you think about the impact of this data within your systems, you're never going to be able to get to optimized inventory. You're never going to be able to reduce carrying costs if you have 8 of the same ball bearing with over 60 of them sitting on the shelf. You're not going to be able to get to spend analysis or strategic sourcing. Plant maintenance efficiencies are going to go down, right? Ultimately impacting your SAP environment. Once you have a good understanding of the data within your system, the next step is to really establish that taxonomy, right? The classification and standards from which you will describe each and every single material. Utopia has developed an industry-leading standard, leveraging things like UNSPSC, IDEX, as well as our own internal extended taxonomy developed by our engineering team. In this instance, right, we have a liner hanger here. Every single time this liner hanger is described within your environment, it'll be described as hanger, liner, and then all of the associated attributes, whether they be mandatory or optional, used to describe that data. This provides structure and form to each of the material masters within your environment. The end goal is being something like this. This is an example of what a material data transformation program would yield. Just using the top line, you have an example of 4 ball bearings that are effectively the same ball bearing that were in the same system. Going through that cleansing process, you're able to remove extraneous details, standardize the way some of it's described. You can then associate it to that taxonomy to take it from, ball bearing, bearing ball, 15 millimeter, 35 millimeter bearing ball, etc., to a standardized description, right? With the noun, bearing, the modifier, ball, all of the associated attributes. Furthermore, Utopia was able to enhance this data to provide additional insight as to what it is. What are the details around that ball bearing in that enriched data on the left-hand side? All of this activity is actually driven by technology. So across the bottom, you see the build, fix, sustain framework. You have build, where you actually analyze, map, profile the data. That's done using SAP Information Steward. You have the fix, right? That cleansing and validation of data, the parsing of information. That's done leveraging data services and some internal machine learning capabilities that Utopia brings to bear. Ultimately, though, we do want to get to governance. You're going to make a significant investment. I'd like to say that there's an easy button in this instance, but there isn't, right? You're going to make a significant investment in cleansing and standardizing this data. In order to do that and to ensure that that investment stays good for the long term, make sure you have governance in place. MDG is a great platform to consider doing that. Coming to the end of our discussion, I'm quickly going to review a case study with a global LNG, liquefied natural gas producer in the Middle East. At the time, they're much larger now, but they were about $10 billion in revenue, 5,000 plus employees. And Utopia supported them with an audit of their MRO processes, the data in their SAP systems, because they had a concern over whether spare parts levels were adequate to support the uptime that they wanted in their plant. They wanted to know if they could optimize their spare parts level with the quantity and accuracy of information they had in their systems. And then they wanted that detailed estimate to understand where are those savings opportunities in their organization. For them, right, and I think this applies to most companies that are on the phone right now, MRO materials and spares are really, really interconnected, right? There are many things, right, if you're going to go through a spares optimization process that you need to determine that optimum inventory level. Just starting at the bottom over on the right-hand side here, not all materials are really created the same, right? You have unique spares, right? And those are spares that would be assigned to a single equipment or a single bill of material. You have common spares that might be used across bombs and equipment. And then you have those insurance spares that, God forbid, something happen in your plant or facility. That insurance spare is only used when a catastrophic event takes place. Inventory levels can be determined for each of those, right? And bomb completeness, what materials needed for maintenance, is a key driver for that. Procurement performance, is impacted. What happens if you don't have inventory, which is driven by SAP matching your physical asset in your plant. Ultimately, the accuracy of the material master, right, the taxonomy, the cleanse data, the linkage to the bill of materials, will help determine, right, all of that success. All of the other stuff, right, failure, work order history, et cetera, can help determine the complete bomb accuracy, which can be complete or which can't be completed. So from that standpoint, to optimize those spare parts, the complete and accurate material master, complete bombs linked to equipment, work order history and usage are all required in order to optimize that scheduling and planning process, to optimize MRP and procurement processes. As you look at the next slide, this is an example of the analysis that was performed on the material masters. They probably had maybe 5 to 10% of duplicate materials in this instance, but what was more interesting was which materials were assigned to one bomb, right? So they had about 40% that were unique materials. which material was assigned to more than one BOM, right, or those common spare parts. We then looked at materials that were not on a BOM, and that's the section broken out in purple on the right-hand side. 9% of those could be assigned to BOMs, right? They had a work order issued, there was usage, but 16%, there was no way to figure out where that material was used. Manual intervention was needed to determine where it was assigned, or is it obsolete? If 16% of those materials were not assigned to a BOM and there was no usage, why are you maintaining those materials in your system? The 4Cs process will help with that. It'll help identify those spare parts in those manufacturing part lists. Furthermore, we went and looked at the equipment BOM status. When we were looking at completeness of equipment tied to BOMs, what was important here is that 40% of the equipment didn't have a manufacturing part name, part number, or BOM. Not enough information was really there to assign what they were. 22% of the materials had materials in a manufacturing and part number. Ultimately, right, the goal being that you want one BOM and a complete BOM associated to each of those equipment. Those BOMs could be used across equipment, but one BOM and a complete BOM. With 40% not having enough to create a BOM, in that instance, you're going to have to go through a process similar to physical verification. Ultimately, right, the recommendations and benefits that we saw from this program, right, material masters, they determined they had to go through that cleansing process to standardize, enrich, and deduplicate it. Create standard structures, right? If you think about how a functional location relates to an equipment, relates to a bill of material. But more importantly, because this was very much geared towards MRO and spares and inventory optimization, they determined that every maintenance material deserved to be attached to an assembly, which was a part of a structured bill of materials that was attached to an active equipment, right? That was their end goal. Ultimately, yes, they were able to achieve complete and accurate information in SAP for equipment and materials, but that data cleansing process in and of itself wasn't enough, right? Really what they were looking for and what they were able to achieve was identified materials that were needed for each equipment, right? Whether they were the regularly used items, inventory levels associated with that, or the insurance spares. They were able to reduce the risk of critical spares not being available. They improved the levels of inventory for their maintenance purposes, right? So they didn't have as high carrying costs. And their ability to better plan work orders, right? Effectively reducing work order waiting, guys sitting on the shop floor waiting for a material to become available because it wasn't listed as a part of their spares. So in summary, I think there are 3 or 4 things that I'd like to leave you with. MRO, right, materials, is connected to and impacts so many areas of an organization and the business, right? From procurement all the way out to the guys sitting on the shop floor. It is critical to have that information around your materials to be of high quality, correct, and valuable to those cross-functional teams. In order to optimize those processes, right, that cleansing and enrichment step is going to be key for the success if you want to optimize MRO and MRO inventory. A combination of people, process, and technology need to be used, right? So your team, external providers, leveraging, for example, the SAP information management toolset can accelerate and improve those processes. I can't emphasize enough, though, the importance of governance in this whole thing. The investment that organizations make in a data quality program should not be lost because they don't have governance in place. Right, that governance can take many forms, MDG for enterprise asset management, MDG for materials, processes in place, an organizational structure, policies and procedures, information steward for a passive governance program. All of those things can support the ongoing maintenance of quality of information and should be taken into consideration as part of your program. So with that, my contact details are on the right. I hope this was informative and valuable to those of you that have joined today. I believe I have 1 or 2 minutes for questions.
Okay, first question. Rich, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. First question is, can you achieve MRO optimization without the cleansing and enrichment of data? Rich, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Sorry. Yeah. So the cleansing and enrichment process is absolutely critical to getting to better insight into how to optimize spares. Without that ability to consolidate down and, for example, remove duplicates, you're never going to be able to say, hey, we have those 8-ball bearings that are functionally equivalent duplicates within our inventory. You're never going to be able to get to that optimized, spend with the vendors where you're spending a lot of money, right, across different material types. So can you achieve some benefits? Absolutely. Is it going to be as comprehensive or significant a benefit? I'd probably say no.
Okay, with that, it doesn't look like there's any other questions. So that concludes our Q&A portion of today's discussion. If you do have a question that comes up afterward, please feel free to email Rich. His email is up on the screen. It's randerson, ANDERSON @utopiainc.com. Today's recording will also be available on our website at utopiainc.com. And with that, I would like to thank everyone for joining today's webinar. Thank you.